I'm Cheryl Heller, and I founded, we're going into our 6th year, the first MFA program in design for social innovation. And I also have been a practicing social designer for a lot of years, and having worked in the social space, having come to understand the power that we all have to intervene in other people's lives, and having launched a program that is institutionalizing the teaching of it, it comes with a big responsibility to know what one is doing. And so in this program, we work with a lot of organizations out in the world. Our students are out working in the world. And it became apparent that we should begin a conversation to try to figure out how what we do works. Because it's a new field and there's a lot of excitement around it, but no one is really measuring exactly the difference that design makes. So measuring social innovation in general is a really difficult thing to do. Measuring that component that human-centered design, or whatever you call it, makes is even more difficult. And that's the conversation we started. We called it the Measured Summit for designers who like these things. The D at the end of measured is for design. And we had a lot of conversations about how to frame this in a concrete enough way so that people would know it was for them, so that we could begin somewhere, and decided that health was a wonderful place to start because it's such a big field. It involves all kinds of diverse practitioners. You know, there are organizations of all kinds involved in health, and that would be the way to begin a conversation that was universal. We got together people from foundations, from corporations, from global NGOs, practitioners of design, healthcare professionals. It was really a wonderfully diverse group, and began with a half a day of a smaller group of people getting together just to sort of scope the conversation we wanted to have. And one of the things that was sort of familiar is that, I don't know if you've found this to be true, but whenever designers get together, there's a conversation that begins talking about what design is, right? Because it's a big, amorphous and exciting field, but this conversation, when we got together, went right to, let's measure social design. Okay, what is social design? Let's figure out what that is. And so we began sort of the conversation by looking to define what we mean by social design. And I brought what we use to describe it in the program. We say that social design is the application of design methodologies to solutions for complex human problems. When we talk to people outside of the design field, they have no idea what design methodologies are. And I always tease my students that it takes them until the spring to be able to explain to their parents what they're studying in school. We go on to say that this is, we deal with poverty and climate change and planetary health and food insecurity and injustice and inequity and human health. But it still doesn't quite explain what design is doing in that mix. When we think about what social design is, we think about the familiar things that people know and appreciate about design, which is designers have an ability to make complex things understandable, to make information accessible, and to visualize ideas that have been invisible, which allows people to come together and agree and create a shared vision. And the thing that I find gets left out of social design a lot is that thing that designers bring, that only designers can bring, which is to make something desirable. You know, we've learned how to make phones that people want to hold and touch, and cars that people want to drive. And so we look to bring that same ability to delight people to social design, so that it's not all like we're selling root canals, you know, that we really do want people to delight in responsible behavior. And then other ideas that we talk about are new to the contexts in which we're entering. And when we speak to people who are outside of the design field, it helps to explain these things. The first one is that viable solutions come only from inside the communities in need of help. We cannot know what it's like to have the challenges that we're trying to solve. We just can't. And so solutions always come from outside of the individual design world and inside the communities. So the notion of the designer as the visionary genius who gets an assignment and goes away and said, this is what your new museum will look like, or this is the solution to all your problems, is flipped on its head. And designers are facilitators of the creative process rather than the owners of it. That prototyping and observation are more effective than 5-year plans, which if you have worked as a consultant, you know is a really difficult shift to make. It's much harder to go into a room and say, we actually don't know the answer yet, than I've done this 10 times before, and trust me, I got the answer here. That all social challenges are systemic, and that no intervention should be undertaken unless we really understand the entire system that we're affecting. That participation in a collaborative creative process is a foolproof strategy for building agency and capacity. We say all the time that the process is the strategy. And if you go through the process, people will come together. They will find a way to align. They will identify the differences they have. They will see what the greater common good can be. But all these things are easy to talk about, but they represent an enormous shift in approach and in power. What we're asking for is people who have always controlled things to give up the control and to let diverse communities in, and to not know the answer in advance, and that's really difficult. So we say that it can't be done alone, and it can't be done in theory. All this stuff has to be practiced in the world. We all have seen design at work. We all have seen the difference it makes when we engage the people that we want to help in the process. And foundations, the Gates Foundation was there, the woman who's been charged with embedding the social design process in the Gates Foundation was there. So there's enormous enthusiasm for social design, but the fact of the matter is it's a new field, and we say we're driven as much by what we don't know as what we do. And so I'm going to show you just a couple of pictures, and then I think before we get into a discussion, we'd love to know a little bit more about you and what you're interested in knowing so we can gauge the conversation. I mentioned that we had a workshop the day before with a smaller group. All practitioners and people came and told stories of what they had been measuring and what the issues were, what was working, what wasn't working, what they learned, what might be applicable to other issues. There's Jesper, and Jill's around. We had, the night before, we had a really wonderful, one of our alums, for his thesis project, invented an idea. He was obsessed by food waste, and he invented a concept for a pop-up restaurant called the Salvage Supper Club. And this was a caterer, they go and collect food that's diverted from landfill. In other words, they go to farmers markets to get overripe bananas, and they go to grocery stores for the things that couldn't sell because they're bruised apples, and they put on a delicious dinner. So we had one of those for everyone. And then the next day, we had 14 speakers. Heather Fleming was there from Catapult Design. She's a very well-known product designer. Michael Murphy, if you don't know him, his work is amazing. He is an architect with mass design. He works with Paul Farmer. Started out building hospitals. And his point of view is that hospitals and buildings have the capacity to cure a whole community and to benefit a whole community. Zoe Bespalko was there from Autodesk Foundation, Evan Thomas from Sweet Lab at Portland State University, Anne LaFond, who is with John Snow International, which is a very global measurement and evaluation company. Maggie Breslin, who was instrumental in developing the Innovation Lab at Mayo Clinic and is now leading something called the Patient Revolution. Sunday Bridget Jones from the Rockefeller Foundation. They're involved in city resilience. Doug Powell from IBM. Mark Brackett, who deals with emotional health from Yale University. Jonathan McKay, who's with the Pray Celt Foundation. They work on programs to benefit maternal and infant health all across Africa. Roseanne Hegarty, who is a force of nature dealing in homelessness. Tracy Johnson from the Gates Foundation, and Jake Porway from DataKind, who is a data scientist. We had provocateurs in the audience who sort of collected the questions and translated the zeitgeist of the audience into questions for panels. And as I said, we had about 250 participants all told. The podcasts of all the speakers are online and available for anybody who wants to look. And we have no illusions about how big this undertaking is. That was just our way of starting the conversation. It's part of why we're here, as Jill said. But following up, we're doing an issue. We started a publication called The Understatement, which is the antidote to bloviation, obfuscation, and something else. Anyway, so the next journal that comes out is going to be articles by some of the speakers and some of the templates that people used for measuring things. And we're also beginning a project to create an online manual for people to use as a resource of different applications of social design and templates for measuring it, and definitions and timelines. We've got great plans, and it will be a serious and not fast project. It'll probably take 6 months or so to get out. And with that, I just want to say we are really looking forward to understanding where you are in terms of thinking about design and the impact of design, and what you would like to talk more about.